joining us here on the Next Opportunity Social page. We have an amazing interview today. I'm super excited about it. We're welcoming Nina Payne, who's the founder, CEO, and visionary. I love that you've got all three of those titles.
Why not?
Of Foundation Management LLC. So this is a booming, incredibly successful event company that's calls Detroit home, but gaining that, you've got national attention with your incredible work. So Nina, we want to welcome you. We're so excited to talk to you more about your journey, entrepreneurship, business growth, everything in between. So let's just dive in. So
let's go get it. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Opportunity to kind of talk and share some of the things that I've learned over the years, and then, learn about what you guys are doing as well, because I think that's important.
Yeah. So tell us more with your own words. I don't want to speak for you. So tell us more about yourself, your background. Why did you fall in love with entrepreneurship? Let's just dive in.
Well, I'll give you the short, long version, right? So it all started way back when I was a little girl. There was somebody in our family that was a truck driver. And it was fascinating to me because the person could pick up and go wherever they wanted to. They lived on the road. And when you got into their truck, their bed was behind the two seats. They had the refrigerator. They had all of every needs of home right there. And it kind of, I told my dad I wanted to be a truck driver. I didn't really mean I wanted to be a truck driver, but I something about the lifestyle of freedom kind of resonated with me. And I didn't know what it meant at that time. I just kind of stuck to that. It just was fascinating. I could just take my truck. If I wanted to make some money, I'd pick up a load, drop a load off, and then I would, do whatever else I want, travel, whatever. And so that resonated with me. And then when I got to high school, I just naturally was that friend that planned all the parties, where we're going this weekend, Nina, we're going here, we're going there. Here's your itinerary. I just was that person, an organized person in my friend group. So that led to planning birthday parties and graduation parties and that sort of thing, just because I like to do it, not because of anything other than I was that person in the friend group. And then one time I had one of the dads give me $50 for planning a graduation party. And I wasn't looking for anything like that. It was just, you did your girlfriend thing. And I remember looking at it like, this is a real $50 bill. Okay. And I had a job then and making money, but it was like, put a pin in this because this is something that, I could make money at. Never even thought about it prior to that. When I got to college, I went to Eastern Michigan University when they were Hurons, not Eagles. And I met up with some people. I don't know, I always had a drive for just making money. And I had to pay for half my school. And so I had to work full time, and I needed to be able to back then create some hustles to be able to get some additional income coming in. And so I had a full-time job. I planned parties with some of the fellas up there. I did some female exotic and male exotic parties. That's for another interview. But work to make a little side dollar on this side of legal. I would venture out. And so I just kind of fell in love with the production end of planning events. It was just, take an empty room, build it from scratch, ideate what the outcome's going to be, ideate what the experience that the client is going to have, the guests, when they walk into the room, what is the first thing they're going to say? Like I started building all of that back then. And it just kind of grew from there. And so when I got out of college, however, I graduated with a degree in business and organizational management, and I couldn't find a job. It was like, back then it was like you graduate from college and they were entry level positions that were supposed to be guaranteed to you if you graduated in business, and they would train you in whatever department. Well, that was a lie. That didn't happen for me. And so it was one of those moments where things have always kind of gone well, and I set a goal and I make my goal. And that was one of those things that just was baffling to me. And just to give you an example, I you guys remember Price Waterhouse? You remember the firm, Price Waterhouse accounting firm? Well, after sending out like 100 resumes and 20, 30 interviews and that sort of thing, I got landed an interview at Price Waterhouse downtown at the Renaissance Center on the 50-something floor. I was so excited. It was the best position for me. It was really an organizational restructuring position. And then I got the position. And by the time I got home, they had left something on my answer machine that said that they had downsized that particular department, and my position went out with it. And so I was like, it was just one of those times, you know. At the time I was managing the dry cleaners, because that's kind of one of my hustles at Eastern Michigan. I would manage dry cleaners and press clothes and that sort of thing for extra money. And I remember one of my clients, you know, I just had a knack for taking care of my people. And so one of my clients would come in daily. I knew what everybody wanted. It was kind of one of those things. And he happened to be a DJ on 92.3 FM. His name was Ken Bell. I just reached out to him recently just to thank him for, you know, his network. And we got to know each other. He knew my background of events and concerts and that sort of thing. And asked me if I would help his son, who had a group, to be the road manager. And I said, I don't know what a road manager is, but okay, we'll figure it out. And, you know, I'm always open to try new things. Let's do it. And next thing you know, I'm traveling up and down the coast, managing this group called The Y. And they were a cover band. Very good. But I learned a lot. You know, I was open. I really, really enjoyed the production, like I said before, of being out there. You know, I experienced the whole throwing groupies out of hotel rooms and, you know, drug life and all that sort of thing. And I remember coming back in a van full of boys, and it smelled like boy feet. And I said, $20 in my pocket, because I had to argue with the promoter for the band to get paid, and we had some issues. And that's just one of those things where I love what I did, but it wasn't it, because I wasn't making enough money. And so I decided to go back to church, because that's my foundation for everything. And as soon as I got there, I started managing the music ministry and throwing concerts and events and logistics management for the women's conference. And I kind of honed all my skills. There's some amazing people at that church I still keep in touch with. And then I invited a group to sing at a spring concert, and they asked me if I would manage them. Here's another opportunity. I don't know. Yeah, sure. You know, let's do it, you know. And I had to talk, because I had a lot of responsibilities at the church. I was working full time at that point. Finally got a job at a tech company. That particular tech company, I was able to start as an installation specialist, I think was the name. And I grew into, I've traveled 50% of the time. I was on the road again. I think most of the jobs I've ever had, I traveled a lot. So I was able to move up in that company. And so I was doing simultaneously. I started Foundation in 2000. I was managing at this particular tech company. I was operations director, had a bunch of people that I needed to lead, as well as a team of people on the other side. So I was working 80 hours a week easily while traveling for the tech company as well as my management company. So the management company started growing as I was growing at that particular tech company. And, we started making some splash, and I started hiring people. And so we were doing things like, I had up to 15 artists at one point. And so we were doing things like, I would have an event on one side of town or in California or Florida or wherever. And I had to send people to do the work because I couldn't be everywhere. And it grew. And so there was a moment at the tech company where I decided that it was time to go because this was booming. And also I found out that in that particular establishment that the men, my counterparts, were making a lot more money than I was. And so and there was a glass ceiling. There wasn't really any place for me to go, and it's time to spread my wings. So I remember making that decision in January of 2004, and I had left by June of 2004. And both feet all in, and we were on our way. Now I'm not working full time and have a business. I'm full time in business, and it's been that way ever since. And so we moved through touring and had these local acts all over the place, and that got the attention of some national management companies and production houses and other managers. And I started working with international artists and traveling the world doing tours and operations and road management and stage management and production management events. And eventually that got to a point where I realized that I was now off of my vision, and my vision being peace, passion, and purpose, to build a legacy for the people around me. And I was having a ball. I traveled the world, meeting all kinds of celebrities and did all kind of amazing things. And I'm thankful for the opportunity. I wouldn't have had that opportunity had it not been for some people who believed in me. And so, but I knew it was time for me to focus right back on to foundation management and rebuild. And at that point is when I decided to get off the road, 2 feet on the ground in Detroit. At that point, I was traveling so much, I didn't really have a network here in the city. And I needed to build that network. I was, just all over the place. And so it was time for me to build a network, reach out to the community, connect. And I looked at what I had done, and I decided to do the things I was passionate about, which is event production, and a place that I could make a decent wage and be able to grow it and support other people as far as staff and contractors and vendors and, a life. And so in 2014, I came off the road. So 2015 was my really first year at being in corporate management, corporate event management. And this was going on 5th year. So last year and a half, we've been working on branding the company and spending a lot of money on investing in the company and changing the look and establishing processes and procedures and, the whole nine. And then came COVID. So that's the long and short version of where we are. So really in this space, corporate event management, production, and staffing, I'm a new player in the city. I've got 20 years of business experience that I could bring to the table, but I still have a lot of work to do. I still think, as many successes that I've had, there's never a moment where I get like, I've arrived. There's never that. So I'm always, got my goals. I think my goals are still back there. I got things I have to do, people I need to meet, things, we need to cross off. And even in this space where we are, we're in the pandemic and events, where we're not gathering, and I make money off of people gathering. It seems like a no-win situation, but it's not. You want me to keep going?
So that was incredible.
Yeah, that was amazing.
But
I know a lot in a little bit, so I just wanted to give you the whole. That's
you did. That's an amazing way to start.
That was great.
With so many other nuances, but we'll talk about that stuff, I'm sure.
So I want to unpack some of this because you said something.
Let's unpack.
I want to unpack, right?
Okay.
So, they said that entrepreneurs aren't born; they're made, right? And whatever philosophy you have, it's yours. But I gathered early on that it was already in your DNA, right? It developed from an early age, right? You were on a trajectory towards entrepreneurship, right? As I'm listening to your middle school experience all the way through college. So one of the questions I have, right, because I know there are people out there, even including myself, you start doing all these different ventures and these different things, but you really don't see yourself as an entrepreneur. You're just hustling. You're just doing things and earning money. And you really don't, at some point, you start to see yourself as a business owner, like, okay, I need to go from just doing these various activities and earning income and hustling to actually building something, right? And you start looking at your business differently. So I want to hear what that process was like for you.
Well, it's interesting. Let me just chime in. It's interesting because when I started the company, it was about that. It was about building a business. It was about understanding what a business was. It was about trajectory. It was about growth. It was about being the best artist management and special events company in the country. That was the path I was on. And so that fueled me leaving corporate America, right? Because we were able to grow it enough to make sense for me to leave my amazing job that I had, I was making pension and 401k and the whole nine. And so, which was a great decision, one, because, I needed to be able to manage my growth myself and not have a company do that. But then two, it definitely was about setting goals and reaching goals. And I definitely acknowledged the fact that I was a business owner. What had happened was when I got introduced to the national and international market, I became more of a freelancer than I was a business, a solo entrepreneur, so to speak. My staff was managing some other things here, and then that started to drop off, and I was out doing the thing, you know what I mean? And so I lost focus of what my initial intent was when I started the business. And so it was important for me, and it's important for others who are listening, to remember your why always. And so when I look at my life vision being peace, passion, and purpose, when I looked up one day and said, this is great, but I'm not doing anything that has any impact, really. I'm throwing concerts, it's amazing. The artist that's on the stage gets all the accolades for it. They're building a legacy. But what am I building? What am I contributing? What's my impact that I'm making? That involves my purpose. And when I started seeing that, I started seeing how the industry was changing. Artists were firing teams left and right. It was like, I felt like being in corporate America again. I found myself kind of right back in. It was doing all this work, 22-hour days, traveling the world, but there was nothing I could hold on to. So for me, it was like, whoa. This is not what I should be doing. It was obvious. And I'll give you an example. I think we woke up one morning and Fantasia, if you guys are familiar with her, decided she was going to move to LA, fire her band. And, it was a wrap. 30-something people were out of a job. And that just resonated with me. And I was like, I will never give someone that type of power over my livelihood again. That's not going to happen. And so that's when it started coming back. And I had to go back to my why. Like, why does this match why I wanted to do this in the first place? And it didn't. So that's when I came off the road. So in that period of time, I said between 2006 and 2014, that's a long time. Well, it wasn't 2006, but probably 10 to 14. I would say between 5 and 6 years, I was kind of floating around. Right. Not really, like you said, not really taking ownership in being an entrepreneur or a small business, but just kind of, getting a check and traveling the world and, meeting celebrities. It was kind of like that. And then I woke up and this shook me up enough for me to get grounded and then start to build again. So that's the story.
So I'm going to unpack this a little bit more.
Okay.
That caught my attention.
Okay.
Because there are people listening in right now who are working their quote unquote cushy jobs, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people's eyes have been open, right? I think a lot of people finally realize you believe in job security, you might as well believe in the tooth fairy, right? But nevertheless, it's still scary, right? You have the 401k, you have the structure, you have all these things in place. And you also talked about that 80-hour work week, right?
Yeah.
A lot of individuals fail when they attempt to make the transition because they have no idea the type of sacrifice is going to be required to get to where they want to get to. And if you don't mind, expound upon that. What was that process look like? What was the day-to-day? What were you thinking when you were doing those 80 hours and transitioning from corporate America to business ownership?
I had set some goals that I wanted to accomplish within foundation management. It needed to have exhibited a safe space for me to be able to do the jump. Like I needed for it to get to a place where the revenue generating components were enough for me to leave my 6-figure income job. You know what I mean? I needed to have saved up enough money to be able to handle myself for a period of time as well. So there were some specific goals that I wanted to have in place before I made the jump. I had no doubt that when I made that jump, that it was going to be successful.
Why?
I just knew I was going to give it all I had. Like there was no piece of me that said it wasn't going to work. And then, you mentioned, I have a hustle spirit. So if it didn't work, I was going to do something else, but I wasn't going back to corporate America. There was no plan B for me. Just dealing with the situations in corporate America, being a Black woman, being a woman, being in leadership, and understanding how the dynamics worked in that particular company for me was enough for me to say no more. And so there wasn't, I didn't think about there being a plan B other than, if the industry tanked, because I don't have any control over that, like we're experiencing now, then I would need to make another move. But it wasn't. And then there was other things too, like, multiple streams of revenue, just making sure that I didn't have all my eggs in one basket. And that was part of the wake up call that I had when I was on the road. I looked around and I was working for multiple artists, but all of my eggs was in entertainment. And, even the events, all the events that I did were specifically for artists. And so I just felt really uncomfortable in that space. So having multiple streams of revenue or having more than one pot is important in the game as well to kind of assure, for me that I didn't have to go back to a 9-to-5.
I'm going to ask one more question, and I
That's
know we should do that, but I have a couple more, right? Okay. So you have this thing now where you have people saying, I'm going to develop multiple streams of income, right? They have 5 or 6 things going on, but none of them are streaming. They're like striplety, right? Nothing really sustainable is transpiring. And it's easier said than done to do that, right? To create multiple streams, right? Because you're juggling a bunch of different plates. And how do you make sure one thing is given enough time, enough investment to grow and prosper and do what you need to do, right? So that's something I would be interested in hearing your feedback on for our audience. The other thing that I'm thinking about too is when you have to start hiring people for the first time, you're giving up a little bit of agency, right? That requires a little bit of agency. You got to trust.
Oh, yes.
You have to trust people, right? You're inviting people into your vision. You're inviting people into your baby, the things you've built. And for a lot of people, that's difficult to start taking on talent, how to manage people, how to speak with them, how to engage them, how to onboard. Those are 2 things I'm thinking about as I'm listening to you. Okay.
What do you want me to talk about first?
What's the question,
first? The multiple streams of income for me, and everybody is different. You got to work. You have to decide what you're willing to do and not do, and what fields are going to be right for you. We have real estate. That's, kind of a passion of mine and my husband's. I married an entrepreneur. So we, it's all kind of ideations happening. He has a product line right now. He's selling, masks. He does merchandising, international business. So he always exporting and importing and doing different things. And so with him, it's easier now that we are diversifying it in multiple ways. And so when something comes up where like now, that's why you have to diversify. If one stream of your income goes down, the other one's supported. And then the other thing I want to say about multiple streams is if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, and I believe this about everybody, you have to look at what other talents you bring to the table. Say, for instance, you're a glass maker and you only want to make glasses. There are 25 skills that you have to learn in order to make this one glass. Look at your components and what skill sets you bring to the table. And there are other opportunities that you can tap into that will bring you income. You have to look at and break things down in a way. Like there's restaurants right now that turn their stores into retail because the restaurant business was dead. What are you going to do? Cry in the corner, close down? No, we're going to pivot and we're going to make the best out of this. And so now we're selling the products that we once made. I thought it was fascinating to see how people are, pivoting in this process and not allowing this to beat them. That's the mindset of an entrepreneur. So did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Because you have a lot of people chasing the shiny object, right? Yeah. And they really, whether it be by training, experience, what they're really passionate about, you look at it and you're like, look, you don't build a business for a temporary fix, if you will, right? If you're thinking long term. So I love that you shared that. The hiring process, inviting people into your business, the 1099, W-2, how did you navigate all of that?
Well, I have done several things. I've had people approach me and say they want to intern or, get into the event business and they want to learn from me. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting perspective because that works as well because there's already an energy behind learning. Yeah. And then I've also approached people where I see them working someplace and they provide excellent customer service or the task that they've been given, which is done so well. I look for selfless people. I look for people who are willing to learn and grow and, don't mind the grind. Events can be, difficult and that the hours are, challenging for some and the work can be brutal. The clients can be testy, there's all sorts of things that happen. And so it takes a certain type of person to be able to work in the event industry. And so I'm looking for those type of skill sets when, we're talking so what I've done is some of the people that are on my core staff, most of them are contractors. And so I pay people by the job. And so depending on how many jobs we have, this is how we calculate how much they get paid. So I don't extend myself out where I have this huge employee dollar amount to have to spend every month or every year. I do have regular contractors, don't get me wrong, but I'm able to manage it that way. And because we're still in the growth curve, we're not at a place as far as I'm concerned. We're still in the growth curve. And so we're implementing new things and we're ideas. And so we'll get to a point where, and I've got an admin that I do pay, but that we'll get to a place where, we'll have to do employees. But right now we do contractors, and those contractors invest into what we're doing because they want to learn, because I also mentor them, because they generally have some sort of desire to have their own business. And so I'm able to work with them and give back to them and pour into them and share my resources with them. So the value add that they get working with me, I think is why I'm able to keep people for so long.
So you'll hear business owners say this, right, as a reason not to hire individuals, as a reason not to bring on talent. They'll say, well, they can't do it as good as me. They can't do it. They're afraid that the person they bring on won't do the work the way they want it done, or do it as well as them and do it exactly how they want to execute, right?
Yeah.
You had to overcome that. What did that process look like?
Well, I understand that people don't do things exactly like you do. We do have training processes and do make sure that people are, from an ethical standpoint, is way more important. I can train you on how to do the job, but I need you to be the type of person that is going to reflect the business. So that means when I can trust you to walk up to a client and not solicit them, or I can, I could expect you to walk up to a client and be respectful. I can expect you when a client is going off about something that you don't go off back. Like, I need those type of people. I can train you on how to be a stage manager, production manager, do the event stuff, registration, put up pipe and drape, all of those tasks that go along with the event. Those are trainable, but who you are as a person has to be at the core. And those things are more important to me. And so I focus on that. It's really a part of the brand of Foundation Management to provide an acceptable level of customer service. It has to be that way. And so if you're not a person that can be humble to do that, then this not a place for you. So that's how I pick my people.
I love it.
So, and then in the regards to people who say they can't do the job, like me, like, you're only one you, right? And so I don't expect the end result needs to be the same, but how you get there, I've opened myself to that. There's only one Nina Payne. There's only one John Bruford. There's only one Jelly. There's only one of you. And so duplicating myself doesn't mean do it exactly like me. Duplicating myself is get the job done in the way that the client expects. And so the process might be a little different. I give some leeway to that, but the end result needs to be the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect.
I want to dive into that a little bit more from a different perspective of, I love that what you look for in contractor, employee, whatever, is more of who they are as a person, because you understand what you're able to teach them to be successful and how you want it done. But what I'd like to talk about is what are some of these misconceptions about your work or your industry, or things that, because you talked about the gruelingness of events, and I think that I've done event work as well, and it is grueling. But I want to dive in a little more. Like, it's not just all glitz and glamour at a rock concert, right? So, what are some things that people they assume or they don't understand as much about the work that you do or being a part of that industry?
I think it's just that. I think but it's okay. So when attendees or guests arrive at an event, the last thing you want them to know is how much work it took for you to get there. All you want them to experience is that feeling of amazement, excitement, whatever impact you were trying to invoke in that event. And so it's not their job to understand, the industry, and it's not their job to understand that we were up all night putting these 40-foot drapes up. It's none of that. It is our responsibility to make it seamless for everybody who walks into the room. And so you've been to events before where you can see they're struggling. They're late, or, something's crooked. The sign is crooked. It fell down behind the presenter, all of those things. My job is to make sure none of that happens so that everything is seamless. And so to do that, however, it does take a lot of practice. It takes a lot of diligence. It takes super detailed perspective. It takes me being a little difficult on my staff at times because things have to be right. Tablecloths have to be the same size. They have to be, the napkins have to end in the same space. The chairs have to be, all of those things have to be right, because people won't remember necessarily all the good things, but they definitely will talk about the bad things. And so you're only good as your last event. And so you don't want to have any of that type of impression. So there's a misconception in there, but I don't think that particular issue is an issue that I dwell on. My purpose is to make sure they don't see any of those issues, right? So I like to work with vendors, even vendors who understand that as well. So my AV vendors, or my decorator vendor, or my stage vendor, they need to be able to understand the goal as well. And so that we work like a seamless team to get this event up. That's how it works. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. No, it does.
Sometimes I go off on a tangent. I don't.
No, I like it. It tells the full story, full picture that way. Questions are big sometimes. They lead to other inspiration.
They do.
Yeah. I do want to shift a little bit too, because of what you do is so interesting right now to hear your perspective with everything going on with the pandemic and you talked about how amazing you've been able to see some other businesses pivot. How have you been able to pivot, or what are you doing to pivot right now? And I'd also really like to hear what you think your insight is, when stay-at-home orders are lifted and things start to come back to where we can meet as a group in a certain capacity. What do you think that might look like?
Very good questions. Pivoting, I've pivoted my whole life.
Yeah.
I've told you guys a couple of pivoting moments where I needed to maybe, make a pivot. And so I'm used to the ups and downs. The crash of 2008 was a really difficult time for business owners and myself. The entertainment got hit at the end of the housing crash. And so I had to, pivot then and be able to tap into some other revenue streams and resources. And when I talk about having other talents and skills at your beck and call to be able to go into when you need to, those things are really important. Like during this time, I'm getting my project management certificate, PMI. That's something I started a while ago, never finished. So some of the training and things that I'm spending time doing to kind of hone the skills and that sort of thing. That's one of the things. It's time to do that. The other things is tapping into other management. So I do project management. I do business consulting. So some of those areas have actually increased, which is great. For my clients that know that I do that type of work. And so being able to tap into your other skill sets, having other skill sets is really important. And if you don't know what skill sets you have, break down what it is that you're doing. So for instance, I was talking about glass, so if I sell hair or whatever it is that I'm doing, how are you marketing? Are you a good marketer? Is that something that you can add, you can help with other clients? It may just be managing people's social media pages, which is a huge asset to so many different people right now. It may be, you do a great job at doing content on social media with, quotes or whatever, designing different quotes. There's so many different things that business owners have to be able to do that if you break everything down, you have so many skill sets. So, but you have to be willing to pivot and change with the marketplace. So if you want to continue to do in-person events and you don't make this change, you won't last. Like you have to realize that the event, travel, tourism industry took a really, really hard hit. You're talking everybody from MGM and Las Vegas being shut down to, Italy and Paris, the Eiffel Tower being closed. So you're dealing with a huge global issue. And so if you don't pivot, you won't endure. You have to make that decision. Some of us as entrepreneurs are so freaking stubborn. We think we know everything all the time that it's difficult for us some advice. This is the lane I'm going to be in, and this is what I'm going to do, and nobody's going to stop me. I'm going to make it all the way. That's great. But is that reality? When I was managing artists, it's one of those things when it wasn't enough just to know how to sing. You need to know how to play an instrument. You know how to write music. You need to know how, you need to have other skill sets in order to be able to make revenue, in order to have a livelihood. Because not, as you've seen with music, it's changed, and now that, the selling CDs and selling singles and streaming online doesn't make you the same amount of money as touring. And guess what? There's no touring right now.
Right. So
you have to, you see these artists trying to diversify online and to be able to get some, but if they had those things already in place, that this change will be less painful for everybody. You know what I mean? So you asked me another question. What was the second question?
Well, I was just curious to see, when we are stay at home, what do you see this looking like for the future with events? And I know that's a loaded question because this is very up in the air, but I'm curious from your professional insight. I'm sure you've mulled over this during this time of what's this going to look like when we come out of it to a certain extent.
I call it when the curtain rises.
Yeah.
The curtain rises, and what do we see? I believe that the people in my industry, especially, will have to make sure that they include virtual in everything. I think we were doing a little bit of that. I'm partnered with a gentleman that does live streaming. And so we were already in that space, thank God. So I've kind of done some research, but we're not going back. This is new normal. So even if we have an opportunity to do hybrid events, because my focus is interactive participatory events. I like people to touch and to have experiences in person. And so the transition to virtual, once I wrapped my mind around the fact that we weren't going back, then it was all steam ahead on what these were going to look like. I believe hybrid events are going to be every day for us. And so there are people who will want to attend, and there are people who, in person, and there are people who won't want to do that. And so we have to be able to accommodate both. We need to be able to look at when people do come in contact or to an event in person, what does that look like? I talked on one of the chats that I did about event professionals being able to look at their contracts, look at their insurance, look at emergency exit strategies, look at on-site health professionals to be on site. Generally, if you do a larger event, I'll have an EMS truck or something there. But now we have to look at having nurse assistants and nurses and that sort of thing and attendants on site at every event, because we just don't know what we're up against. And so that's a cost that I have to talk to my clients about. That's a whole new kind of thing. And so with the clients that I'm working with, I'm moving, we're talking about moving most of their events, all of their events virtual. But what does that look like? You know what I mean? And what other things are we going to have to look at that we've never had to look at before? And so we're walking through those transitions with clients that have never even thought about doing virtual events. And so, that's difficult. But I think hybrid events are going to be the way of the future. If, there are some conferences that have been online for years. They've always been online. That's just kind of how they've done it. So we need to take, note of that and know that this new normal is going to include, it's not going to look like what we had before. And so if people think we're going back to normal, the old normal, they're mistaken, and they need to get ahead of the curve. And that's every business model. Every business model needs to think about that, not just, events. So that's what I think is going to happen. Who knows? But that's what I'm aiming at. I would love to go back to doing some in-person events, but they're all going to be hybrid. There's always going to be a component of virtual, I think, within those events. So yeah, pivoting, yes. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm hoping that we can, I'm hoping the worst is over. I have high hopes, we'll see. But we'll see. I don't know. What do you guys think that's going to happen when we come out of this? And I'm interviewing the interview.
I agree with you. I think it's impossible to think that you can't have digital or virtual elements in any part of your business. I mean, my background's digital marketing. I've been on a high horse of this, every business needs this, right? Every business needs digital components to promote themselves. And so much of my work is with small business owners who, to be fair, are very reliant on their local communities, and they've been very successful that way. But you still have to have, even with your local community, this digital element for them to connect with you on that way. So yeah, I don't see it going back to normal like it was pre this way. It will be. I am excited to see what innovation comes out of this to really make virtual a really personal experience, because I think that's the part where I would miss that at a concert or an in-person event, that energy that I feel that comes off from a really great event. How am I going to get that same energy from a virtual event? So there's still a lot of growth and opportunity there for that.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking about that with a client. It's like, the events that we've done in the past, the way we've done them, and I have a lot of reoccurring events and clients, thank God for that. But they won't look the same online. So we have to come up with something totally different. Some of the goals might be the same. It might be a fundraiser, or it might be an awards banquet of some sort. But how do we communicate? When you communicate virtually only, there's a different feel. There's no laugh track. There's no clapping there, so it's a different feel. You're not going to feel the same. And so trying to get their heads around the fact that we've done this event for 5 years, it's been successful, 1,000 people, and now we move online. I have to look at what the advantages and the disadvantages are. So the advantages of moving online is access. You have access to so many different people, your social media game, your data that you can collect, the interesting things that you can do while you're on one of these platforms, whether there's, chat rooms and questions or polling or, the things that they have now. I want them to have more. I've been looking at so many different these platforms and trying to create this experience, just like you mentioned, that is as good as we can get without, because here's the thing, I'm looking at a computer screen. I also can get up and do my laundry. Right. So you have to keep me engaged enough so that I'm engaged. And that could be challenging when there's so much online and that's all you have. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the day where there's both. For me, I like to be in person and interact with people, but I have to be able to be, do both. I have to be able to do both. So looking at advantages and disadvantages of moving online and be able to create new opportunity for clients, new revenue streams for clients, new opportunity for sponsors to be a part of these virtual events, so that they also get all of the digital footprints that, they may or may not get at an in-person event. You know what I mean? We might do a social media campaign and say that, Bank of America or whoever is sponsoring the event, but imagine what it looks like if I'm looking at this screen for 4 hours, So I think there's some really good advantages. And I think, my conversations is about, how can we make the best out of this? How can we win out of this situation as opposed to what won't happen? You know what I mean? And so it's my responsibility to be able to offer the clients opportunity to kind of look at different platforms to see what's going to work best for them. So
I'm looking at what's behind you. I've been focused on that for like the last 10 minutes.
Uh-oh. I got something?
Yeah. I'm looking at goals.
Yeah.
Oh.
Repeatedly throughout this discussion, when you've talked about pivoting, you've talked about what is determined your trajectory, you've talked a lot about goals and vision and mission. And that's a piece that is often neglected. We're so often just doing. And then, of course, they've struggled with goals, right? It's not like most people have taken a class called How to Set Goals in Middle School or high school or college, right? Arguably, it's one of the most important skills you have to learn, particularly as an entrepreneur, but it's also the most neglected, right? And so without being too nosy or getting too much into your intimacies, I still want to know what does that process look like for you when you are goal setting and vision planning and mission boarding and doing these things that are necessary to kind of keep you on track and keep you grounded? For those who are listening who are like, I don't know how to set goals. What does that process look like? How do I do it? Like, how do I get focused? How do I get grounded? And it's different for everyone, but what does that process look like for you?
For me, I set a life goal. When I talk about peace, passion, and purpose, those not just words that I picked up because they start with P. They really are life goals for me. And I set my company goals built around those. And so whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, or some entrepreneur and goal setting person is going to tell me that's not the way to do it, that's the way I've done it. And so peace for me is everything. Meaning, if I find myself in a position that takes my peace, then it's not the position for me. So it's easier for me to kind of do tracking if my life goals match up to my business goals. And so the sense of freedom that I talked about when I was a young girl, and being able to kind of move and shake when you want to. If you're not feeling well, you can take the day off, be the master of your own domain. That's in that peace place. And for me, I have to have it. Passion is an opportunity for me to be creative, and that grind and motivation and feeling I get when I'm accomplishing things, like that thing right there, I have to have. It's just part of who I am. It fuels me. And so when I look into an empty room and I'm like, okay, what are we going to do to build this event? And I get excited. That's fueling my passion. I have other passions. I like to paint, and I love hanging around my family, and we sit around the kitchen table and have these really intense conversations. I'm passionate about those things, and I try to make sure that those things are included. And then a purpose for me is about legacy. Why do I do this from a foundational standpoint, financial standpoint? I'm building a legacy for my daughter and my bonus daughter. So these real estate, with the real estate company that we have, they'll walk away with real estate. They'll walk away with companies. They'll be able to continue the business that we started, if they so choose, or they could sell it. We have life insurance policies and savings so that they'll be able to, be invested in when that time comes. And so those are the three things that I line my business goals up with. And so from a financial standpoint, that's, revenue generating, multiple revenue streams, not like we talked about, but multiple revenue streams, passion, being creative and motivated, and self-care and all those type of things. And then peace, being able to be okay with me, and making my decisions and confident in the things that, I do, and being okay with saying no to a client that doesn't seem like it's going to work in my piece. And so if you feel, and I'm, blessed to be in that space now, but I don't have, all money is not good money. And I'm real careful about that. I'm real careful about the people that I put in my space, and who, if it looks like they on the side of gray and legal, or if they are somebody who's a little volatile, any of those types of things that's going to interrupt my peace, then I may recommend them to someone else. Yeah. And so I build goals based off of that.
You said so much just then, but I want to unpack it, but we're running out of time. But I want to thank you for mentioning that financial foundation piece. That piece is so neglected, right? Making sure that your business is structured properly, making sure that you have a certain investments held in certain vehicles, the whole estate planning, the life insurance, the business succession planning. Personally, that's one of my biggest fears right now. There are some iconic businesses here in Detroit Metro, iconic, and I know the affairs aren't in order. I know that business owner doesn't wake up tomorrow and clock into work or open their doors. That business literally disappears. And it's a conversation that we can't have enough in the entrepreneur ecosystem. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you. It was necessary.
Absolutely. I know you've been in business consulting for a long time, and you understand, you've seen the back door and the books and that sort of thing. And so I think coming back into this space, coming out of the music game, that's one thing that was purposeful on my mind when I talked about mind mapping and getting back to business and growing this company, was about those three pillars, and then making sure that those things were in place. They've always been in place, but I want to add to them, you know what I mean? And making sure that my daughters have a leg up in this game, if they choose. Right. My daughter goes to Central Michigan. She's a junior. She is vice president of her fraternity, and she's got all of these opportunities to do amazing things. And so I think she will probably take some of the, I don't know, we're in the real estate, and I have another daughter that just graduated from Georgia State, go Deja, and who's an entrepreneur at heart as well. So we have to be ready for that. And we want to be able to equip them so that they have an opportunity that, and we're so excited about that when we leave this earth, they'll be okay.
Yes. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Two fun questions, I guess, right?
Okay. I like fun questions.
Fun questions.
Yes.
What is your superpower? Or or what is your spirit animal and why?
That's interesting because somebody was just talking about that a couple of weeks ago and I had to look it up because I didn't remember. My spirit animal is turtle. And
why?
All I can go off is what they told me on the test that I took. But being agile, wisdom, adaption or being able to adapt. I think were some of the attributes that they talked about. Yeah. And so I guess I'm a turtle.
I love it.
A superpower is something that my dad taught me, which is manipulation in its finest. Meaning, the superpower, when I took the test for superpower, it said mind reading. And I've just kind of grown to be really good at reading people. And so my dad used to use that for manipulation. I try to use it for all good. The powers are all good. And being able to connect with people and be able to help people and be able to know if this person's going to, if they're serious about what they're doing, if they're playing around, if this is just a side hustle, or if this is a real business, or if this is a hobby, being able to ask certain questions to be able to know what I'm dealing with. And so I've been able to really hone that skill over the years. And so when I took the test and it said mind reading, I was like, wow, okay, superpower.
I like it.
So what are yours?
Haha.
How about that?
Yeah. So the one superpower I think, or I've been told, or I believe I have, is empathy.
Okay.
Empathy. Even though I've been told I'm articulate, a great speaker, and blah, 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 blah. I actually enjoy sitting back, being quiet, and listening and learning more than anything else. Okay. Understanding where people are coming from. Being humble. Which is part of having empathy. I've gotten to a place where I just don't judge because I've experienced some of everything, the good, the bad, and understanding that people are coming from different places. People have different crosses that they're bearing. People have had different types of trauma that they've experienced.
Yeah.
And you need to be aware of that when you're engaging folks, right? So the ideal that you just can't assume. And, I experienced 2008 as a business owner too. I remember that year and subsequent years vividly. And the lesson I learned is you can be business owners that were on top, can be on the curb tomorrow. Yeah. When situations like this transpire. And so 2008 really opened my eyes to empathy and being humble. So I would say that is my superpower. In terms of my spirit animal, Jaguar is the animal that repeatedly comes up when I take those tests. So Jaguar can be social, but for the most part, they're independents, right? They fly solo the majority of the time. Fierce hunters. They're quiet. They don't announce themselves, but when they get on you, they're there, right? So some of those attributes I find to be very apropos.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Jaguar. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Do
you know yours, Richelli?
Yeah, I didn't know there were proper spirit animal tests. I need to take
right. There's always something out there.
I did. I always use the phrase or use the animal duck, a duck, and that's because I had a really amazing boss one time that really explained to me in the job that we were dealing with a lot of high stress situations, and that he's like, you got to be like a duck. You're gliding on top of the water, but those feet underneath are moving 800 miles a minute, but nobody sees that, right? And I think that explains a that though too with that event industry, right? With like those feet, they're moving. We don't see it. We just see the beauty of the glide on top. So I try and embody that. I guess a duck is my spirit animal. So I try and embody that. The energy I'm putting underneath the water is gonna make that glide even.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. As for my superpower, I don't know. I really need to think about it.
That was weird, right? To be asking that question. Like,
I try. There's some things that are similar to what like Jawan said because of the nature of what I do in working with small business owners. I try and be very tailored, I guess, in a way of realizing we all have very different situations. We all have very different lives. We all have very different goals. We have all very different purposes. And I love being able to dive into what that means for you and helping map that out. So I need to think a little more of how to summarize that superpower.
Yeah, take the superpower test.
Yes, I need to take the superpower test.
Superpower test. Boy, there's always something.
Yeah.
I got enough to deal with.
Well, and wrapping up here, if you could impart some lifelong lessons or entrepreneurial tips or lessons, if you will, that you want our listening audience to take heed of or to be aware of, just certain things that you believe are so important for those who are aspiring entrepreneurs, or quite frankly, those who've already made the leap and they're in the throes of figuring it out, whatever their deal is. What would be maybe one or two like tips or suggestions or lessons you'd impart?
I would say if you don't have a vision, create one. And because it's a tool, it keeps you focused on the big picture. I think a lot of times and I say we because I'm guilty of it as well, we stay so much in the weeds of the business that it's difficult for us to pull out like a duck and look at everything that's happening below us. And so that keeps us kind of like a hamster on a wheel as opposed to growing and being able to have a bigger. So if you have a vision, like I have on my wall, it keeps you focused on what's next, as opposed to, okay, I got to find a software to manage my CRM and those things will have to be done too, but you have to focus on what's coming, to be able to grow and to build. And for those who, here's the other thing, for an entrepreneur who is a solopreneur, who is maintaining a good living by being a business owner, that's awesome. Don't feel like you have to take on the pressure of building a major company. I think there's so much pressure in that. It's okay to be a solo entrepreneur, LLC, but solo so that, and you just make a living at being a small business owner. There's no harm in that. And there's so much stuff on the internet and pressure to build and grow and get your webcast and teach classes and do all this sort of stuff. I just want to encourage those and there's so many of them. There's so many of them that it's okay. You know what I mean? That as long as you are happy with what's going on with your business, you're making the living that you want to make, you're doing what you're supposed to do based on what your goals are. That's hats off to you. And you've been maintaining, and so many businesses that, have been out here forever and they're maintaining, they're doing great. And that's okay. They may not want to be the biggest, sandwich shop in the universe, or, they may not want to do that. And that should be okay. And people are telling them, no, you have to do this and you have to do that. And you have to, I think people need to just figure out what their goals are, create a vision, figure out how goals to get there, and decide what you want to do for you. That's why we're entrepreneurs. We want to do what we want to do for us and whatever, and impact the community, right? So we want to, that's the difference between small business and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship wants to change the world, create and, make a product or a system or something that's going to impact. But the rest of it is small business. We are, creating a livelihood for our families. And that's okay. It's okay to do that. And I think there's just too much pressure. So it's okay. That's the other thing. Know your why, get a vision. And then two, if you decided that your goals is what you're going to do, then that's okay. Do that. And it's okay. That's what I wanted to say. I think the other thing is too, all of us have been through a lot of things. I think for me, I had to plug my computer in. One of the things that people don't know about me is I've had 3 strokes, and I went through a period of battling with lupus. And in the midst of all of that, I was a business owner. And so, having to, if you have the unction, the balls, for lack of a better word, to do this entrepreneurship, you can do anything. So we're talking about superpowers. Those who take this leap and they're out here figuring it out and grinding and researching and going to school and all these different certificates and doing Zooms and Be Lives and Facebooks and trying to learn and grow. You are amazing. And, I just want to encourage all the small business owners out here that we don't know what you've gone through, but you have, you keep going, keep shining, do the way you want to do it. There's so much information online that sometimes it can just be overwhelming. Do I do it like this? Do I do it like that? Do I do it like this? Should I have done that? Maybe I should take that class. Like there's a lot of that if you have a vision of what you're trying to accomplish, then it's easier to kind of dissect through the mess of all of that. Yeah. And a lot of it is opinions, not necessarily facts. So learn how to decipher and pull away from the information and decide for you what's going to be the best route for you. And then go out and get the information that you need to make that happen. As opposed to going out and you reading every book and you're looking at every podcast and you have all of this come at you. Now you're just kind of waddling in space as opposed to moving. So, yeah.
I love it. Thank you so very much for your time.
You're welcome. This was fun.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So tell me about Be Live. This is, are you suggesting that people use this Be Live?
Yeah, Be Live is a streaming function that partners directly with Facebook or YouTube to go live on the platforms. And you can have multiple guests. That gives you the option to make this really clean and clear. The other thing is that we're using it as well because while we love streaming on Facebook Live, we also want our video. So this is the video. We can put it on YouTube. We can put it in multiple places if we need to. And it comes through really clear. I think this worked really well for the first time to use it. So I found it to be super easy. You can add logos. You can really add a lot of customization to it. So yeah, it worked out.
I see that. Okay. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Nina. Just so people know here on Facebook, in case you came in halfway through or a little bit late and you're worried that you missed it, this will continue to live on Facebook. Just give it some time when we're done and it will be available for permanent replay whenever you want.
How long does it take before it's available?
I think Facebook just has to process it. So I'd say give it an hour, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
And it's there and you can jump through, skip through, find what you missed and watch whatever. So
well, if someone wants to, I've been taking these Zoom calls with business owners and other people just to chit chat about what they're doing, to talk about, how they can make a move, transition, just random call from, I put on LinkedIn, I got a call from a young lady who just wanted to do a Zoom call to see what the collaboration looks like. So I'm open to that. You can find me at FMLLC events on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram, or Nina Payne anywhere. So reach out to me and let's see if we can collaborate on something. It's that time to kind of see what's out there and to connect with people like you guys. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining
us. The pleasure was all ours. And Of course, for our listening audience, as always, look at Next Opportunity Social. You are the best thing about what we do. And any feedback, commentary, suggestions in terms of topics or subject matter you'd like us to cover, we are all open ears. So by all means, please do provide that feedback once we conclude here.
Absolutely. Well, enjoy what day is it?